The very first thing, though, that I want to do, and this is really special to me, is I want to invite um, Rob Schuham to come up. He's so many things. He's an investor. He's an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur. He's an advisor. He's a mentor. He's a partner of mine. He's a former boss of mine. He has incredible insight into what's happening right now in the world, and I want to introduce him to everyone. And I just honestly want to have an opening, just quick conversation with Rob, because Rob and I have been with so many people talking about how this all happened. And so, Rob, please say hello to everyone and jump on in. How did we get here, Rob? Tell us.
Can you see me and hear me okay?
I can see you and hear you just fine.
Awesome. Great. Yeah. How did we get here? First of all, Bud, thank you. I think we're in the mutual admiration club with each other. Bud was employee number 5 at Undercurrent. So that's how we got to know each other. And Bud, you have blossomed into somebody that I have massive admiration and respect for. So I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be working with you in the capacity. And I guess where I wanted to start was, for the last 10, 11 years, I've been deep in the climate movement. So I've been looking at the fragility of our ecosystems, our environmental ecosystems specifically. And that started to take me on a journey where I met with many other brilliant people who had been sort of investigating sort of what are the underlying sort of mechanics of civilization, and how did we get to such a fragile place where we have zootropic leaps from animals to humans, and we have pandemics that get created that trip financial systems into complete disarray. And maybe what I'll do is I'll just sort of go back to sort of what does the whole notion of fragility mean, right? So if we're building resilience, the question is, what are we actually building resilience for? We're building resilience for essentially, almost like this global system fragility that we're living in, where everything is connected to everything. Our systems are open, they're complicated, and when something happens in one system, we end up with cascading effects in other systems. And it's almost like a quantum physics exercise. We joke about the matrix a lot, but and the challenge is, how do you see the matrix? How do you see through it? How do you see around it? And especially when the matrix is actually dimensionalizing at an exponential rate. And if I go to sort of the environmental piece, which is a place that I always like to start, we live in this finite world. We operate like it's infinite, right? We can endlessly pollute the skies. We can dump plastic in our oceans. We can poison our water systems, right? There's no accountability. And what's essentially happened is like this thing called capitalism has kind of grown up and become massive and has created all these unintended consequences, which then have resulted in all of this externalized harm, which never actually gets accounted for, right? And so we have effectively debased nature, right? We're sort of in this world where a shark is worth more dead than alive for its fins in certain countries to make soup. An elephant is worth more dead than alive for its tusks and its ivory to some people. And importantly to this conversation, sort of the trees and the forests and our precious biodiversity. And this human economy footprint that we've been creating, co-creating to a certain extent and expanding, has resulted in this like relentless expansion of development, of mining, degenerative agriculture, and it's encroached on our remaining, wilderness and our precious rainforests, right? So epidemiologists have been sounding the alarm bell for years, right? That these altered landscapes have enabled kind of these infectious diseases to more easily make the leap from animals to humans. And that's an example of sort of like where a natural delicate ecosystem meets with a man-made delicate ecosystem. And so in this case of these novel viruses, right, we have not developed as human beings any kind of capacity to deal with these kinds of viruses. And so we sort of like blew sort of this plant and animal balance, right? And so Mother Nature, in effect, is kind of slapping us back right now. We're feeling it pretty significantly. The other place we're feeling it right now is, of course, in our economy. And I think we've all watched kind of with horror, the stock market, our 401ks, our retirement accounts, but most importantly, people that are really close to us and dear to us who are getting laid off, losing their jobs, the service industry, you know, all but sort of collapsing except for except for the digitized ones. And if the economists who are watching this will just give me a little bit of spaciousness for a second, I want to sort of take you to how we ended up in such a delicate ecosystem place, in that place where we are right now, right? And there's three, I'm going to call them rough phases, right? There's sort of like the linear phase, the multiplicative phase, and sort of the exponential economy phase. And the first phase, the linear phase, was if you go back in time, right? Economic output was essentially proportional to input. You know, plowing a field, for example, right, resulted in you grew things, you took them to market, you exchanged them for either money or goods or services, blacksmithing, basket weaving, right? All the old trades and guilds and stuff like that. But there was a symmetry in that form of capitalism. It was very much one-to-one. We then, you know, sort of phase shifted into this multiplicative economy, right? Where all of a sudden you had surplus, right? We went from being hunters and gatherers, and those of you who've read Sapiens, you probably are well aware of this, right? To farming, to then storage. And once we started storing food because we were able to save the surplus, that's when the construct of ownership kicked in, right? And so when ownership kicked in, what you found people that were able to start renting property because they were able to save and buy more property and then lease it to another farmer, for example, right? They were able to make loans. It was the rise of middleman, right? An emergent sort of energy economy way back in the beginning, right? But what was happening is you were now setting up a situation where you could radically outcompete others. And what happened was that symmetry started switching into asymmetry. And then we started having wealth inequality when people were making money from the activity of other people. Okay, so that's kind of like the capitalism I think that we still kind of think in. And that's what our context is. But really what's going on is there was another massive phase shift, and we're all sort of witness to it because we're in it right now, which is the exponential economy. And what happened was you started adding multiplier effects onto the multiplicative economy. And what we evolved to was like pure financial services, interest accrued on interest, for example, right? Fractional reserve banking, a digital economy, which was actually able to engineer out scarcity in some way, shape, or form, right? Making money at a scale that was otherwise completely unachievable in a multiplicative economy, right? So an example is like an app store where you can sell the same app to billions of people, or central banks making money on the money that's used by all the people. The thing that the multiplicative and exponential economies have like in common with each other is they're built on these, it's like a three-legged economic stool, right? It's scarcity, extraction, and hoarding. And those are almost like three behavior dynamics in our economic system right now. And then you combine that with this like exponential economy that's actually very abstract. Most of the people in this world have no clue where the money is actually coming from. They don't know what a money supply is, right? They might have stocks in their 401ks, but nobody can tell you the beginning or the end or how the stocks got to where they were. Like we're gauging actual performance in kind of this real time, or we're gauging it in arrears. But what we're not actually able to do is tell you with any concrete or tangible way how the system actually works. So it's almost like an economy of abstraction. Now I'm going to bring the two together, right? How, for example, do we have this kind of, these cascading environmental impacts, and how do they interact with the economy? Well, I'll leave you with, I'm going to start with this. Uncertainty breeds uncertainty. Okay, so let's go back to environmental degradation. Right? A pandemic hits. What does that create? It creates a massive amount of uncertainty. What does uncertainty do? Well, it trips the circuits on two of the three behavioral underpinnings of the economy, which is scarcity and hoarding. Witness what's happening in the food stores, right? When those things become inflamed, right? It's almost like shooting a bazooka missile into this abstraction economy. And then what happens is you get all these like massive cascading effects that occur. So when I talk about system fragility and interconnected systems, look at what's happening right now, right? So from a geopolitical standpoint, governments are actually starting to cooperate a little bit, but until this moment, governments were not always cooperative, right? Another system, our actual national government system that we're sitting in here, right? We have total instability right now, and we have really awful sense making that's happening, right? So this is sort of like part of the cascading effects, right? We have civic infrastructure overwhelm right now. So national government or federal government's interaction with states and locals, not very good right now. It's getting better, but it really started off from a very unstable place. The financial systems, right? We never really healed from 2008. We just didn't, right? We didn't actually put all the mechanisms in place to shore up the financial system in a way that made concrete or tangible sense. And then I'm going to take it into two places that are impacting us right now, and then I'll hold for a second, right?
Okay,
Medical
bring us home,
system
Rob.
overload.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, we're sort of in the, you know, Italy's like throwing the towel in right now, right? Because their medical system is another delicate ecosystem that's suffering from a set of cascading effects. Supply chains are being interrupted. So, you know, so we end up with resource depletion. And I'll stop it on kind of this note right now, which is we live in a system where we have totally traded efficiencies for durability, okay? And it's all because of money. And what's essentially happened is we have just-in-time manufacturing, right? We have food, you know, crops being harvested to meet just-in-time needs of human beings. All of that is kind of failing right now. So that's what I mean when I talk about cascading effects, system fragility, and kind of what we're sort of sitting in right now.
Yeah. Oh my God. I would love to, like, we could do that. You and I have done this for days straight. I would love, I mean, so many people while you were talking were cheering you on and want to hear more about this stuff. And I know that our fellow panelists are also going to talk on a lot of the categories too.
Yeah.
Rob, it's so great to have you. Just a plug for you. In a partnership in Nobel is the reboot of Undercurrent to serve leaders who are starting to look at their organizations and look at the world and have a personal transformation within themselves and have a hard time figuring out how to do that within the walls of their companies. And so, like, I very much would drive folks to you, who you're on our website, and to the Undercurrent website if they're interested in learning more about that. But thank you so much, Rob.
Sure, of course. And apologies to everybody. I saw in the chat that people were saying slow down. So maybe we can use the panel to sort of break some of this stuff down.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, I want to bring up Sarah Dickinson, who's our co-MD of Vancouver at Nobel, who'll be leading the rest of this section. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Bud.
Hello. You know, you're the perfect person to talk with the rest of our panelists on this topic, not only because when we first met, you had spent so many years working with leaders and helping leaders do their own transformation. But then for the last year, you've really been thinking about resilience and leadership, right? And the idea that the world around us is so frenetic and changing so fast. And how do you as a leader respond to that? Not just, what I love about your work is not just like, what do you say, but how do you embody it as well? So I'm so happy to have you, and I'm going to let you take this section.